sex is it can be either the most open or closed things people can do. Like,
Yeah.
because people can have sex and not have any emotional connection, not be vulnerable, be butt naked and still be super closed off. Or they can be completely open,
Yeah.
completely vulnerable, trusting their partner. So when you think about some stuff when it comes to sex, like,
Hey, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to How the F Is This a Podcast. And today we have our special guest, Stephanie Linden, who will be talking about a few things. We're going to talk about what we talking about
Let's
today.
talk about
Sex,
sex,
baby.
baby. Let's talk about you and me.
Woo,
Let's talk
woo.
about all the good things and the bad things that maybe. Let's talk about sex.
Sex.
Wait, when I said
Gold
that, I felt
Rush.
it just reminded me of like Coming to America for some reason when I said this. Anyway,
Anyways,
really excited to have you, Stephanie, and to start to have this conversation around sex. Um, when I was growing up, I don't know about y'all, right? But when I was growing up, I my mom never talked to me about sex. A lot of the sex that if I heard anything, it was from somebody at school or watching Max After Dark, or I don't even know if it was called Max After Dark, but like I got all of the concepts. Huh? Was it Max? HBO After Dark, maybe?
oh, I'm like, what the hell is Max after the? I
Cinemax.
used to watch Real Sex.
Cinemax.
Oh, yeah, Real Sex.
Yeah. What?
No.
Okay,
No,
go
like
ahead.
after
Finish.
dark. It would be
Yeah.
like soft porn or whatever.
Okay.
Now that's like but what I'm saying is like that's how I gained an understanding about sex or that limited understanding about sex, right? I'm like, oh, what do people do for porn, right? And so it's interesting because as I got older, right, and I started to introduce myself to like self pleasure and all these things, I didn't know any of this. And so, um, it really came to my attention about the impacts of porn and how it has like kind of shaped how people see sex, how people perform sex, and for the worse for some, for a lot, right? And so that's how I started to know about it when it started to like when I would watch it or when my pastor did a sermon about the impacts of porn and stuff like that.
Mm.
So I'm just curious, as someone who is an expert in this space, how has the ideas around sex and intimacy evolved for you over time?
Ooh. Um, so like you, sex was not really talked about. I can remember second grade,
Mhm.
my mom had the sex talk with me. But the only reason I believe the only reason she had to talk was because she was pregnant.
Mm.
So it was the where do babies come from? It
Okay.
wasn't necessarily the sex talk.
Yeah.
And so growing up, I distinctly remember when I realized what sex really entailed.
Mhm.
Like, I was 15, I don't know what was going on, but I was in school,
Mhm.
and one day I was like, "Wait, that's what really happens?
Mm.
Like, he puts his penis in your," and I was completely disgusted. I
Mhm.
was like, "I don't understand why anybody would want anybody to do anything like that to them.
Mhm.
That's disgusting."
Yeah.
So similar to you, it's just kind of trial and error. You figured out porn, movies, whatever, and you just kind of figured out along the way.
Yeah.
Well, I figured it out along the way until I got older. And then I started truthfully just learning and being curious.
Yeah.
And then what kind of led me to the sex therapy stuff was just pure curiosity.
Mhm.
When I was working on my master's and things like that in school, I never wanted to do couples work. I never wanted to do family work.
Yeah.
So I was the furthest away from anything like that. And then as I just kind of started working in my career, working in things, I started looking at sex addiction. And then I started looking at sex therapy and sex, like the whole thing, intimacy in that kind of space. And that's kind of
Yeah.
what got me to where I am. And then true, just like, what
Mhm.
is this about? What are
Yeah.
people doing? What's going on?
Right.
So there's so much out here in the world of sex and intimacy and desire and things like that. And I think traditionally we people have done their children a disservice
Yeah.
because they're not really teaching human sexuality. They're not really teaching body parts.
Yeah.
They're not teaching any of that, and they're not starting it young. Like I actually was looking at something yesterday, no, today, and Ontario has like a curriculum starting at grade 1, talking about like human anatomy and sex, and it's like broken down into the different
Yeah.
topics. Of course, for grade 1, it's not sex, but it's learning your body parts, what are the
Yeah.
Right.
appropriate names, things like that. So it's possible we can start having these conversations at younger ages. I just
Yeah.
think culturally we don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
at least here in the US.
Yeah.
I feel like for me, I was in middle school when I first had the sex talk. And the reason why I had the sex talk was because I had a whole bunch of condoms in my room, and my mom decided to get me a new bed set. So I come home from school and she has my whole little plastic bag full of condoms. And she's like, and I think I had like little porn magazines. She like, where did you get this from? Where you getting all this from? Blah, blah, blah. And then she came and had this whole sex talk, like, this is how, do you know how to use condoms? Talking about STDs. But I don't feel like the sex talk, it was more like a scare tactic
Mhm.
type of conversation. It
Yeah.
wasn't more so like she did talk to me about like wearing a condom,
Yeah.
but not really like going deep in depth of the significance of why.
Mhm.
I mean, I guess you could say in her perspective, it was like, oh, I'm telling you about STDs, and I'm telling you about you can make a baby, and that's pretty
Yes.
much all you
Safety.
need to know.
Right.
So I had the
Right.
I got the spark notes,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
other than that, but prior to having a sex conversation, I mean, I was exposed to sex at a young age.
Mhm.
So, I mean, like super young age,
Yeah.
exposed to sex. So, um, as the years grew, just curiosity of like wanting to know like, oh, what's this about, or even doing little sexual acts,
Yeah.
at a young age. I lost my virginity at like 13 or 14.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah. So
Yeah. I was 16. But I do remember thinking about what you said. I do remember having the books. I think it was called like What Happened to Me or What's Happening to My
Yeah.
Body. And they would have it at different ages. And so I feel like my mom just like gave me the book to read,
Yeah.
right? And that was really it. Why do you think parents don't talk about sex with their kids?
I think it's scared.
Yeah.
Truthfully, my gut is I think they're scared.
Yeah.
Um, because it's there's two veins of it, right? There's a safety aspect when we talk about condoms
Right.
and you can make a baby, but then there's a whole space of pleasure
Right.
that I, as a parent, who wants to talk to their kid about
The pleasure
pleasure?
phase.
Because then it
Mhm.
opens a door of
Yeah.
what does that look like and what does that feel like and what do you do and I think most parents don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah.
I think there's absolutely, like I said, a way to have the sex talk, to talk about safety, to talk about body parts, to talk about all these things, specifically, too, when we think about like safety in the space of like assault and things like
Mhm.
that. Like, I think
yeah,
it's also important that that conversation is being had in that realm
Yeah.
because children are getting assaulted and they don't but if somebody says well it's sex well, they don't think they don't think they're having sex because the abuser doesn't typically use the word sex,
Right,
right?
right.
So the kid is like oh we're just playing, meanwhile
Mhm.
they're being assaulted. So we're having these conversations truthfully at a younger age,
Mhm.
we can learn and make sure that our kids are safe.
Yeah.
I think also it's probably hard for parents to talk about pleasure with their children, especially for those who haven't experienced it. So
Right.
like you bring up the fact of like being sexually abused or assaulted, etc. Those and even like people talking about orgasms, like
Yeah.
women talking. I've heard women talk about I never had an orgasm
Mhm.
in my life.
Mhm.
So they not saying that the sex hasn't been pleasurable, but they may not know they haven't reached their maximum
Potential.
limitation and
Yeah.
potential of
Mhm.
pleasure to even really
Yeah.
explain it to
And language is
yeah.
really important. A lot of times people don't have the words. So if
Mhm.
you were a person who was never taught, right?
Yeah.
You just learn things on your own, experimenting and different things. So you don't necessarily have the words. So then you're trying to teach that to somebody.
Yeah.
How can you do that?
Right.
But I do think bottom line is fear
Yeah.
because it's a Pandora's box
Right.
kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
So what age do y'all feel like is a good age to really have that type of conversation? Because we know, at a certain age, at least by high school, a lot of parents should consider and
Yeah.
understand like my child is probably out here having sex
Or
Yeah.
might about to
Or
be.
about to be.
or about to be,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So like when do you think it's appropriate to start having that conversation, and how should parents um like view it? with their kids.
Yeah. I feel like as a parent, you know, I have had conversations with my daughter about all types of things, including self pleasure, right? But there were like checkpoints, for
Yeah,
lack of a better word, where, okay, we could talk about this at age 7.
yeah,
We could talk about this at age 10, and now we're 14, and now, she's older. And so I feel like, but I didn't know when to have those conversations besides the safety part out of
yeah,
fear. And then as I have been in practice of my own pleasure, now I'm able to communicate using the right words
right,
for her to understand how important it is to um, have boundaries, know what you're saying no
yeah,
to, what you're saying yes to, but also the conversation around pleasure.
yeah,
But for her, she like, don't talk to me about that.
right,
Cause now, even though I use these checkpoints, it's like, ew, you're my mom. I'll get
yeah,
the information from TikTok, right? Like, I don't want you talking to me about
yeah.
this. So that was something that I realized was like a challenge too. Even though we're really close, she just like, please don't talk to me about nothing sexual related.
And I think the other challenge too is like, what can their brains comprehend?
Right.
Like we think about development in brains and you can't talk to a 6-year-old like you talk to a 16-year-old because their brains just don't get it.
Yeah.
So like you said, the kind of the checkpoints and figuring out what makes sense at that age. And just realistically in the age that we live in, there's so many resources
I know.
that can tell you when to do it, like,
Yeah.
tell you when to do it. So, being able to check in with a resource and be like, "Oh, okay, this just makes sense,"
Yeah.
or "I'm on time here." But I do think the younger you can start having the conversations,
Hmm.
Mhm.
the better it is. And I think truthfully, the better it is for the person as they become an adult.
Right.
Because you think about as an adult you didn't have these conversations, so now you're not comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
And so now when you think about the spaces of like your partner or partners and so people's situations, they're not able to have the conversation because it was never a topic
Yeah.
had early. Like I know grown people that do not use the appropriate words for body parts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like grown,
Right.
like 40, 50
Yeah.
grown.
Yeah.
And if I know them personally, I'm like, so you're not just gonna call it a penis?
Right.
No, it's a wang wang. No, it's not. It's a penis. Like,
Can
come
you
on,
guys
guys.
just say that? So how can people create those safe spaces to have the conversations with their kids?
I think it's about creating a safe space for everything,
Yeah.
right? And so creating a like that judgment free zone
Hmm.
so a kid feels safe enough to go and have a conversation
Yeah.
with their parent. Like I am 42
Hmm.
and I think I feel safe enough. Well, not take that back. I know it's safe
Yeah.
to have certain conversations with my mom,
Yeah.
but I don't know how comfortable I am in
That's
having
it.
certain
Yeah.
conversations with her.
Yeah.
Just because these were never conversations that we really
Right.
had. And my mom has always been like, "You can come talk to me." Da, 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 da. But I'm like, like I can remember, I can remember having a conversation with my mom in college about this guy I was
Mhm.
like interested in,
Yeah.
and it was guys that lived in an apartment. So I was like, "Oh, I went to their apartment, blah blah blah." And my mom was like, "Well, which one are you sleeping with?" And I was like, "I'm sorry, what?"
Wow.
First of all, I'm a virgin. I don't know what you're talking about. Secondly,
Yeah.
why do you think? And she was like, Stephanie, come on. And I was like, well, naturally, really not sleeping with any of my
Right.
people, but
Right.
what? So, like, she has created, I think, especially once I got older,
Yeah.
she wanted to create that for us, for me and my siblings. But I still am like, but you're my
Yeah.
mom. And yeah,
I really oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say I really appreciate that you even talked about like to create that comfortable space because comfort doesn't start at the conversation. Like, it
yeah,
doesn't start the minute that you decide as a parent that I wanna talk about this specific
right,
topic. It's curated over time.
yeah,
It's curated when your child comes to you and wants to talk about something, and you create a space where they can have not
Non-judgmental.
oh, thank you, that's why you're my homie. Non-judgmental communication because we created this space, and then, there's been times when I had to say sorry to my daughter because I got it wrong, right? Like,
mhm,
maybe she came to me and said something, I was reactive,
mhm,
and she'll know I will be quick to be like, "Age, I'm so sorry. I did not mean to communicate with you that way. I know you were trying to talk." So, I like that you said that, and that would be something that I would add on, that it doesn't start with the conversation. That's curated over the relationship.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
absolutely.
I was gonna say too, so I've analyzed my mom, like, with my niece and just, like, younger children in my family. She'll use keywords. So Stephanie talked about language, right? So
Yeah.
I think once your child is old enough for, like, preschool, you should start that conversation about sex. So, I know for my niece, a code word was, like, butterfly, like, "Did
Mhm,
anybody touch your butterfly
mhm.
down there?" Something like that. And, of course, as the age as she continues to grow up, then you can utilize different code
Yeah.
words or different keys, and then
Yeah.
the language just builds on,
Mhm.
right, into, she hits puberty
Yeah.
or
Right.
per se
Yeah. Yeah.
to know a little bit more about, like, the body and womanhood.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So, what do you believe some myths are? Now we talked a little bit about these kids. Let's talk about us now. What do you think some of the myths are, like, about, or maybe that's a difficult thing because there's so many myths about sex. So, what is one that stands out for you is a myth about sex?
Um, mm, women have to be emotionally connected to have sex with men.
Mm.
I always find it really interesting when people are like, "Well, women don't cheat because they gotta be in love before they have sex," and I'm like, or could it just truly be she wanna have sex with somebody
Mhm.
and she don't need an emotional connection because she got a need that need to be met?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
physically, like, sex is complex, so it could
Yeah.
truly just be a physical thing.
Yeah.
That one, like, sticks out for me a lot.
Mhm.
I think the other one, as I'm kinda learning and growing and just getting older, I think another one that sticks out for me is, like, Black people aren't on kinks and BDSM and all that is just a white people thing
Okay.
when it's an
Not
everybody thing.
Yeah.
Um, those are 2 that kinda stick
Okay.
out for me. What about for you?
I wanna dissect the first one because I was just having a conversation. I use my hands a lot. I don't mean
Oh,
no disrespect. Um, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, actually, and now I find that hard to believe that that's a myth in a way, right? Because I feel like for some women that if I'm not emotionally connected to you, all right, let's say it like this. Like, it can be bad sex,
mhm,
but I like you.
mhm.
I love you maybe. So it ain't that bad. Like, I'm able to
Right.
this feels okay, and then I don't like you no more, and now it's bad. So that's why I sometimes think that, or I think that it is like an emotional component to sex, because a lot of women, when they fall out of love or like with a person, and maybe dudes are like this too, I don't know. Um, the whole idea of sex, they're like turned off physically.
Yeah, no, that's true. That is true, but it's not 100%
Right.
Yeah.
true. So, like, some people see sex as just the act,
Mhm.
Yeah.
right? So, like, I'm just engaging in this act. I want to get off what I want to get off. I know what's gonna please me with this person. I know what I like with this person, and I'm on to the next.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And that's just the actions that they go through with it, but they don't have any type of emotional connection
Mhm.
behind it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I agree. The emotional connection can absolutely make it better,
Yeah.
but I don't think it's needed
Got you.
for some women. For
Yeah.
people,
Yeah.
period.
Yeah,
But I think there's always been this belief that a woman has to have that
Just to do it.
just to
Yeah.
do it. If she
Okay. That's
doesn't
true.
have that, then she's
Right.
not gonna
Right.
attempt or engage.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah. And what was their other one you said about kinks?
That Black people don't engage or people of color don't
Don't
engage
engage
yeah,
in
in
kinks.
kinks or polyamory or any of that kind of stuff.
Mm.
That's a white people thing.
Mm.
yeah. Have y'all ever met anybody that was poly?
Mm.
In real life?
I was supposed to say that.
I met a poly couple
I
in
think I have.
Atlanta.
Yeah, yeah.
um, and I had a whole conversation with them because I was so intrigued. I'm like, y'all lying. I'm like, if y'all really together, once y'all all kiss right now. Like, I was just putting them on the spot. I'm like, y'all lying. We in the hookah lounge, and it was two girls and a guy,
Mhm.
and everybody turning up, we having a good time or whatever, and yeah, they just wound up telling me like, oh yeah, we're all together. So I'm like, oh well, how does that
Work.
work for y'all? And they told me like we go on separate dates and we go on dates together.
Mhm.
You know, we don't argue with one another. We have like code words for certain things. We buy each other gifts. Like it worked for them.
Yeah.
I mean, we see Neo out
You know,
and have
I haven't listened to his story. I haven't like I
Yes.
know there was a little clip and I kind of just scrolled past. I think because it's Neo, I don't care. But I am curious more about that dynamic.
I mean, I think it's to each his own, first of
Yeah.
all. But there are rules to it.
Yeah.
I like that's the other I think people outside looking in, a lot of times people are just like, "Oh, they're just having orgies and they're doing that." No, these people are like in real deal relationships,
Yeah.
have real deal rules and responsibilities. Like I've seen where they're only allowed to date the whole unit. Like I've seen situations like that. Like if it's a man and two women, like he can't go out on a date with one woman individually. Like that would
yeah,
be considered cheating or, for, or I've seen where it's been like, yeah, we go on individual dates. And I think the challenges is when it doesn't work is when people do not establish their rules and their boundaries.
Yeah.
yeah.
And so when the boundaries are crossed is when it all goes to hell.
Yeah. But I also think that plays a part in all relationships,
Absolutely.
right? I think the challenge is often people don't necessarily communicate their boundaries when they're in something that's socially acceptable
Mhm.
because they assume that you should understand what the boundaries are because this is what we grew up doing.
Right.
I
Yeah.
think when you think of people that are in
Poly.
uncommon, yeah, poly, right? We need to talk about this
Right.
because this isn't common in where we're growing up. And so I think that all types of dynamics, there needs to be that communication
Yeah.
to say, all right, this is what I would like, this is what I wouldn't like. And speaking about communicating what we would like and what we wouldn't like, how do you communicate when you don't like the sex with your person? How do you start that?
So
Wait, before you answer, I feel like it's easier for women to have that conversation
About not liking sex, you talk? Wait,
than it is for men.
I
the
think it
sex thing?
depends on who they're with.
Are you
Yeah.
talking about the not liking sex thing?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
I think it depends on who they're with. Like if they're genuinely like with some or they love their person or they like their person, and this is just a belief.
Yeah.
I think it's harder because you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, right? Like if you care about that person, I don't want them to feel bad. Now, if you don't care, oh, it was trash. Like,
That's so
But
interesting.
to me, I feel like more men, and I mean, I don't know the statistic on this or anything. This is just my personal opinion.
Yeah.
I feel like more men would say if they're in a married, if they're married men, I feel like they'll go out and cheat versus telling their partner like,
What
oh,
I
yeah,
I
I
don't
do agree
enjoy
with
the
that.
sex. If it's somebody that you just like, kicking away, y'all having sex or whatever the case may be, I don't think they would tell them. I think they would just go with the flow, get what they need to get off when they do it, and then they'll go out and try to, have sex with whoever.
Mhm.
They may kick them to the curb eventually, but like if they ain't got nobody,
Well, yeah, I agree. I think the other part, because of what people like men, like when I've had conversations with men, for men, I'm always told it's a numbers game.
Mm.
So if I'll just kick you to the because I know something else is gonna come around.
Yeah.
But I think that's also gets men in trouble. Well, people, it gets you in trouble because if I think there's something else is gonna be there, then something else better could be there.
Mhm.
And
yeah.
so to your point about like the cheating, if this is bad, well, something better is over there, so I can just go do something better without really putting in the effort to work to make what you have better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I do think it's a hard conversation because there's ego involved, there's potential judgment, there's shame, there's all these different things that can be involved. But ultimately, if you're not getting what you need, you got to say something. Well, you
So what?
should
If,
say
what if it's
something.
not fixable though? Like what? So say you have a sexual partner, right?
Hmm.
Person you having sex with, and you tell them like, yo, I don't like how you do this in this position, whatever the case may be, but it may be a position that you like, right? But they can't fix it. What if it's an issue they can't fix? How would you deal with that?
I feel like what's the issue you can't fix?
Right?
The only issue to me that you can't fix, dudes can't fix, is size.
Size.
But I
And
feel
even
like
then, you can still do things.
yeah, you can still. So I feel like I don't know if there's anything that people can't fix because I
What
just
if
feel
his motion just not it?
Then you're
Like
not,
the motion.
then
what if he just don't got it right then? And you like, yo, I told you hit it to the left. And he just not hitting it to the left at all. Like,
So where does compromise come in though?
Yeah.
We're talking about like, are we talking about like a relationship, or are we talking about people that are just like having sex?
I think both.
I think both matters, because sometimes people have people that they just enjoy having sex with,
Right.
that they never want to be in a relationship with.
Right.
So I think
That's true.
and you know, you may have somebody that you may want to spend a block on, like, oh, if this don't work out, I know I
Yeah.
can spend a block on
Yeah.
such and such, just for that sexual relationship. And they may have, you know, chemistry in other ways.
Yeah.
But I think that we think that every sexual issue that we may have in the bedroom, we can talk to our partner and say, oh, well, we can fix this.
Yeah.
But what happened if we run into a situation where it's not fixed?
Then you
Guess you gotta find you another partner.
or you gotta, or you gotta figure out what you're willing to risk. Right? Are
Mhm.
you willing to compromise and be like, you know what, that thing right there, I can do without, or I don't have to have that as long as the other things work. But if you
Yeah.
can't, then
You gotta find.
y'all
Better
better,
exit out.
y'all better go to the store and figure something out,
Or y'all might as well swing.
or
That too. You could do that.
You
But I
could do that too.
But I don't see a issue with, like, I really do not want to have a relationship where we cannot talk about our lack of pleasure
Right.
freely. Like, and I know, I mean, there's not a lot, people really don't talk about this
Yeah.
at all.
They don't.
Like,
Yeah.
they're not saying what they want. They're not asking, like, well, how was that experience? What
Yeah.
have you? Like, it just doesn't happen, you know? So, but I would desire to have a partnership where, like, we can both be like, we tried it. It did not
It
work
didn't
good
work.
for
I didn't
us.
like it.
I
Yeah.
didn't like
I
it.
don't want to do that.
You know what? I don't. So, do y'all want the critique during or after?
Do not say it. Well, hold on.
Well, it
When you say
depends.
critique,
Right.
not it depends on what you saying while, like,
So while you and your partner is engaging in whatever sexual activity, and something's not feeling good to you, do you want that critique right there in that moment, or would you prefer that critique afterwards? Like, yo, when this was happening, I didn't really like that. Let's not do that again.
I think if it's like move it to the left or do it this way, you could say that while we doing it.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it's something where it's like, I don't want you to do that again, let's stop or tell me after. If it's not like, or just like stop, don't say it while we're in it. Like, oh, I didn't like that you did that. We're not doing that no more. In it? Because now my mind is there
Yeah.
for the rest of the time. But if you say it after, I'll be like, okay, cool. Or if you just stop it or just try to, switch position or do something different, that would work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, because if you're telling me in mid stroke, I'm gonna be like, bruh, you get up, I'm done. I don't want to do nothing now.
Yeah. What about you? You want somebody to tell you after or mid?
Nah, I feel like if it's something simple, you can tell me
Yeah.
during.
Yeah. Because I wouldn't like that. That doesn't
Yeah.
feel good to me.
Yeah.
That doesn't feel good to me. So what is the right time to talk about kinks?
When do you trust your partner?
Mm.
Right? Because it's about vulnerability. It's about safety. Right?
Yeah.
You want to be in a no judgment zone, because somebody might like food play, and then you be like, yeah, I like it with strawberries. And then be like, you're not gonna mess up my sheets with your little raggedy strawberry. Like, who wants to hear that?
Right.
So being able
Right.
to feel safe with your partner, to have that conversation, and being able to kind of bring it in when you want to bring it in. And because I would imagine most people, well, let me not say things like most. There are a lot of people out here that have kinks, even if they're baby kinks.
Yeah.
They
little
just-
kinks.
Or little kinks, yeah.
Like not baby.
Not baby kinks, sorry. Little kinks, yes, little kinks. But they don't even realize it, because they
Yeah.
just haven't felt safe enough to
Yeah.
say it, or they've been conditioned to believe that there's something wrong with it.
Yeah.
Like you're abnormal because you want to be choked. No.
Yeah. But
Or
that's
I mean, culture and
Yeah,
religion
culture,
and
yeah.
play a big
All
part
the
too.
things. Mhm.
Yeah.
But I enjoy having this conversation because it's more of a curiosity for me.
Right.
I feel like a lot of people are closed-minded when it comes to sex
Yeah.
and the experiences that they can have. I feel like most recently, like, my eyes were open to something that I just was like, if you woulda asked me this even last week or 2 weeks ago, I've been like, "Absolutely not." And then I'm like, "Huh, I wanna see." You know? But that's not so but I think it's more
You want to
about,
talk
like
about it?
no. Uh-uh.
I'm so weak.
Because
But
the nosy in you.
no, but it's just no, but I'm just like, it's so interesting because it's like, I didn't realize how closed-minded, or I don't even know if it's closed-minded, but maybe it is.
Aware, unaware,
Not
maybe.
yeah, I knew it, but, like, I don't maybe yeah, a mixture
Yeah,
of a lack of
knowledge.
misperceptions.
Yeah, or
Like, just a
information.
mixture of it, and I'm just like, "Man, I wonder what it would be like if I was more curious." Right? Or just
Or open.
Or
open-minded.
open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you're not open, or you just not exposed?
Well, that's what it is, exposure. So I was
Yeah.
exposed to something that I didn't know, and I'm like, "Oh, now I know."
And now I know.
Now and I didn't know.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
definitely is a lack of exposure.
Yeah. 'Cause I think so just kinda doing the things that I've done in different, like, educational stuff I've gone
Yeah.
to, I was like, "Oh, well, they really I didn't know that existed." Or, like, even just the space of, like, not even thinking about it. So, like, I went to a, intensive one time, and it was talking about we talked about sexuality through the lifespan, right?
Yeah.
And they talked about geriatric sex, right? And I remember being like, "Yeah, I guess they don't just stop." Once you
Mm.
get old, I guess people keep having, a big but then they talked about, like, tools because let's just be honest, your body you get older, your body doesn't do the same thing, so, like, different tools that people use and or people with disabilities,
Yeah.
right? Just because you have a disability doesn't mean that you're not
Have an age.
sexually active or you don't
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
like, so talking about those types of things, it wasn't necessarily that I was closed-minded to it, it was just I
Wasn't
didn't have
exposed.
exposure, I didn't know about it, and now that I know about it, I'm like, "Oh, well, if somebody comes in my door, I guess I can point them in that direction because just because you turn 70, that doesn't mean. Because listen, they got whole communities,
Listen, do you
with
think
the
people
upside
are
down
doing
smile.
themselves a disservice by not exploring and looking for other ways for exposure when it comes to things?
I feel like people I feel like people want to explore. People are just fearful.
Yeah,
Yeah, they just fearful of what other people going to like. If someone else finds out that I did this or I'm
yeah,
into this, like now they're gonna judge me.
Yeah.
yeah,
And
And I guess that's where that trust piece is
yeah,
talking about, like, yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I think it also depends on like the person. Like some people just don't want to know things, period.
Yeah.
So they're perfectly okay with it, exposure or not. And then you got people that are like nosy and curious that are like,
What if?
but what if? But what
Yeah.
if
right.
somebody finds out? What if
Yeah.
like, oh my God, what if my mom finds out? Or what if my friends? Or what if my
Mhm.
partner? I think too, you think about just different cultures.
Yeah,
Um, and how if you're two people come together and culturally they're different, what does that then look like?
Yeah.
yeah,
What does your exposure versus my exposure look like?
Yeah.
mm,
And then how do we feel safe enough? Do we trust each other? Are we vulnerable enough to have the conversation to bring those two together to figure out what our togetherness looks like?
Yeah.
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 Despite rising societal stressors, it's possible to take care of your well-being. Levels Mental Health provides compassionate care for those experiencing mental health challenges. Our holistic approach addresses anxiety, depression, behavior issues, and trauma, ensuring individuals feel understood. It's time for accessible mental health services for all. Visit levelsmentalhealth.com to learn more, schedule a consultation, or donate to expand outreach and support our community.
I feel like I don't know if we answered this. I feel like we didn't. And I asked it, but I don't know if we gave like our listeners clear tips on how to start a conversation when it's not enjoyable.
We-
We didn't
Yeah.
and I
We said it's hard.
Yeah,
Know
we
your
just said
partner.
it.
Know it's no. I mean, so what I would say, definitely be gentle.
Mhm.
Be gentle in how you approach the person. Um, when you do talk about what you don't like, ensure that you are informing the person like, hey, but this is what I do like, or like, let's try it this way, so that you're giving them something back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then also be open to feedback too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I know because that person may not feel comfortable with telling you,
Yeah.
right? So you may have opened up the door for them to feel like, okay, now I can say something about how you gave me head.
Yeah.
I didn't like that you used too much teeth.
It's not my thing.
No,
Yeah.
but there's some people might like a little
Right,
teeth or
right.
something. Like, it's just
Yeah.
different things.
Yeah.
And yeah, that would be like my
Yeah. I like that though. I like
Yeah.
those tips.
Yeah.
Those were good.
Yeah, I agree. I
Mm.
think then too being able to just sometimes mechanics of it, right? Like I didn't like that because it hurt or
Yeah.
it's not my thing or it doesn't do anything for like I don't see the point. Like
Right.
sometimes it's a little like I don't really see the point in why you feel like you need to do this.
Yeah.
So
Has anybody ever approached y'all like asking you to do something sexually that you never did?
yes.
And how did y'all react to that situation?
No. I'm just
Like in your adulthood, how did you react to that situation?
some curiosity. So I'll tell y'all a story.
Okay. We've been
Uh,
waiting.
So
Okay.
one time, this guy I was dating, he wanted to take me to a swingers party. And I'm nosy. Realize I'm curious and I'm nosy. And I was like, yep, let's go.
Right.
The nosy in me was like, yes, I want to see. He was like, okay, I'm going to pick you up because it's right. And he told me where it was. And I was like, oh, that's where they be having them at. Top floors of hotel rooms. Just going to say that in Richmond. And I remember I was in grad school. So like I was driving home from class. I was like, oh my God, what do I wear? And I'm going through all the stuff in my head. And then I started going, girl, you aren't about that life.
Have a seat.
Have all the seats because that is not your cup of tea.
Mm.
Right. And so I remember being like got to my house and I was like, so it's gonna be a no for me. I don't think. And he was like, "What do you mean? We had already planned to go." And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm also a believer in like, don't get yourself in a situation you can't get out of." And so I was like, my biggest fear would be I get in there and I have consented to something that I genuinely wasn't willing and ready to consent to,
Yeah.
and now I'm here, and not even thinking that somebody was gonna do something to me without my consent, but just the the judgment of being in a space that
And
these
you're
people
not ready to do
and
it.
you're not
Like,
ready to do it.
why?
That was
Yeah.
why are you here? Like that was my thing. So long story short, I did not go. So I don't have any fun stories about what it looked like or what happened. But to answer your question, like absolutely, like I've said no. Like I'm not ready. It's not something I want to do. Not saying it's not something I would never do, but on that day at that time, I wasn't.
Mm.
It wasn't my smeeze.
Yeah.
I still haven't
What
gone.
about you?
No comment. No, you No. Actually, what was the question again? Has anybody ever asked me something that I
Yeah, like have you ever been off guard from somebody's like sexual kink that you was dealing with?
Nope.
Oh, you just with the shits.
Nope. I've never been off guard. But I also think like honestly, I am finding my pleasure spots. And so with that comes with maybe I would never think that I would do this. Like there's some things that I'm like, I ain't never it, again, I just gave that example like, no, I'm not doing that. And I'm like,
Maybe one.
yeah, tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm just like so I think that that's what it is. No one has ever but yeah, no. What about you?
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Let me tell y'all. I'm gonna tell y'all a story. So I went to Miami. It was it was one of my little birthdays. It was like my 29th birthday, matter of fact. So I was dating this girl at this time, and she bought my ticket to Miami. I planned like this big Miami trip. It was like 20 of my friends out there. So we get to the house, we check into the Airbnb, and it's like maybe 15 of us staying at this Airbnb. And we walking around the house like we were staying in the guest house outside by the pool. So we walk around the house seeing everybody's room, everybody picking, what room they want to go in, etc. So I get to my room and I'm walking with like some of my homegirls and my homeboys, And we walked in my room, and that shit was like a goddamn sex store. It was toys wrapped around the goddamn room. Yes. And I was like, what? Like everybody looking at me like, oh, you're a freak ass. And I'm looking like, yo, first off, we had a conversation about sexual pleasure um prior to them prior to us going to Miami or whatever. And there was some things that she was interested in, and I was like, I'm not down for it or whatever. I was like, I'm not down for it right now. Like maybe I'll be down for it later on, who knows, but I'm not down for it right now. For me it was like I what she was interested in, I'm like, this has to be somebody that I feel like I'm married to.
Yeah.
We like, oh, we're gonna do XYZ. So talking about like the trust and security piece, like I ain't trusted. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're not about to be running around Richmond telling people, oh, this what Greg into.
Yeah.
Like, if we don't work out. So I'm like, nah. So we get to Miami, and what we talked about probably less than a month ago that I told her that I wasn't gonna do. She had
there.
all these things there.
Mm.
So we didn't get into no big conversation about it, right? So then over the weekend, while we in Miami, we all in a pool. It's late at night. Everybody, we drinking, we having fun. And she decides to bring up the conversation to my friends. Like, y'all, don't y'all feel like Greg should be open to this, blah, blah, blah? So I looked at her like, oh, now I'm gonna embarrass you because I feel like we had a personal conversation. And like you're breaking my trust.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So I was
The
like,
reason why I didn't want to do the shit in the first place.
and you
Even it now.
So I'm
I
like,
was right.
Yeah.
so I
Good
say,
discernment, Greg.
right? I'm like, yo, didn't we have this conversation already? I was like, I said, do you want me to embarrass you? That's what I said, or whatever. So now like, you could hear goddamn leaf drop on the ground. That's how goddamn quiet it is.
Y'all in the
outside.
pool. And then
We in the pool. It's like everybody's sober.
the mannequin
Every-
shouting, don't move a muscle.
And she just looked, and then I mean after that, it was nothing. But we like from then, so we still on a vacation. Like I was so turned off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't want to have sex.
Yeah.
Like everything. We wound up having sex. It was so quick, the fastest I ever nutted in my life.
Mhm.
Probably 30 seconds. I was just over it. I'm like, yep, I'm done. Like I was just turned off so bad by the
Yeah.
situation. I didn't want to
Yeah.
I didn't want to fuck with her.
And that brings me to, first of all, thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people could relate to being vulnerable
Yeah.
in saying no about something, or even saying yes about something, and then someone exposing you. And those are those spaces where it should be like we should hold sacred,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Those
Yeah.
books. And it leads me to want to ask about vulnerability. How do you think vulnerability improves sexual connections? We hear how the lack of it, or the misuse of it, can ruin a sexual connection.
Mhm.
How do you think it can improve one?
I think it probably can make it like amazing,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're able to be that vulnerable, that open, I always say like that raw with somebody, you can the limits can be endless,
Yeah.
right? And I think sex is it can be either the most open or closed things people can do. Like,
Yeah.
because people can have sex and not have any emotional connection, not be vulnerable, be butt naked and still be super closed off. Or they can be completely open,
Yeah.
completely vulnerable, trusting their partner. So when you think about some stuff when it comes to sex, like the action of it
Yeah.
can be dangerous sometimes,
Mhm.
right? The action of
Yeah.
it can be painful sometimes.
Mhm.
So to be able to trust somebody that much with your body, there
Mhm.
has to be a significant level of vulnerability,
Yeah.
right? Because you are literally, they always say like you're giving your most precious, which I think is bull, but
Yeah.
you are truly giving yourself to another
Yeah.
person, and you are trusting them with the one thing that is you.
Yeah.
And so being able to be completely vulnerable, completely open.
And it's
um,
really freeing when you can do that.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
oh yeah,
But so I was just at ACA conference and I went to this sex education class, and it was one thing that I learned. It said that females they have 11 different ways that they can get orgasms,
Mhm.
and males, I believe it was either 5 or 7 different ways.
Mhm.
You said so.
7, yeah.
Mhm.
And I'm like, I don't think. I mean, I was so we were in
Mind
the
blown?
session together.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we was in the session
Sitting there and I
together.
was like,
Yeah, I'm like, I don't think people really notice,
yeah.
how to. I mean, some of it was self pleasure ways, but then with toys, lubricant, like the facilitator, she talked about different type of lubes and how you can use
Mhm.
them, to engage in sexual activity. Even a different type of condoms. Some
Mhm.
people may do oral with condoms, so you got the different flavor condoms, etc. So just spicing it up. It's mild things that you can do to spice up
Your
the
life.
sex
Yeah.
life, with the ice and cold with that
Yeah, the
hot
icing.
and icy lubricants and stuff like that.
Mhm.
um so I mean, that class was good. I think we was a little bit late, but
Yeah.
yeah.
But it was good and it talked and it she was quick too. That was the other
Yeah.
part. But I think
Mhm.
being able to even again that exposure and have your mind like, "Oh, wait, 11?" Like, I think it was like nipple, clip, like all these just different.
Feeling it as soon as we leave.
Listen, I think I took a picture. I
I'm like,
ain't gonna
send
lie.
it to me.
But to be able so when we talk about vulnerability, being able to be vulnerable with your partner and say, "Hey, I heard it was 11 different,
Yeah.
ways a woman can go."
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
We
explore
on
this.
3. How do we
Right.
get to the others?
Let's do
Let's
this.
explore
I think
that.
it could be playful.
Yeah.
How do people know when they're not being what are some signs that should tell somebody when they're not being honest to their partner or themselves about their experience?
Yeah. I think rationalizing, when you start to rationalize
Yeah.
stuff like, "Oh, well, they don't really know," or "It's okay, I feel," whatever, however a
I've been
person,
faking and
"I've
this
been
is
faking it,
okay.
it's okay."
Yeah.
I think that's one way. I think too, like, ignoring your body
Mm.
too, like, I mean, I can't speak for a man, but I know as a woman, like, there've definitely been things that just hurt,
Yeah.
and it was just not cool.
Yeah.
So, in ignoring that and not listening to that, I think is probably one of the biggest disservice we
Yeah.
can do to ourselves, but
Yeah.
that space of, "Well, I gotta please them, so I'm gonna just deal with it."
Yeah.
Where it's like, no, you could be actually doing harm. Like,
Yeah.
yes,
Right.
there's absolutely a thin line between pleasure and pain, but sometimes that line is crossed and you could be doing harm to yourself in
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
space. So yeah, I think those 2.
Yeah.
I think a lot with sex too. The mind is like probably the biggest powerful tool
Mhm.
during sex,
Mhm.
because while you're engaged, some people while they're engaging in sex, like they may be thinking about so many other things
Right.
outside of that
Whatever.
experience that
Yeah. Yeah.
that they're supposed to be enjoying at this
Yeah.
time, which can affect, the pleasurable,
Yeah.
um, the pleasure that they should be
Yeah.
receiving.
Yeah.
I think one of the orgasms for males and females was mine.
Yeah.
So like basically mind fucking somebody.
Yeah.
And I feel like I did that one song. But I feel like I want to be a master of that. Like,
Mhm.
you know how powerful one that is to really get into somebody's mind, into the sexual experience, and then y'all both just
Yeah.
interconnected in
Yeah.
your mind, and how lit it can be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
But you gotta
that's
trust
why.
that
But
person.
I think,
Can't do that with
Stephanie,
everybody.
Stephanie and I, we both practice substance use. Um, and I think that's why some people they get high
Mhm.
off of drugs
Mhm.
while having sex, because it does play on that mind,
Yeah.
and it makes that sexual experience a little bit better. Not telling y'all to go out there and get high and have sex.
Don't
but
say that we said it on this
yeah,
podcast.
but you see people like we talked about ecstasy,
Yeah.
people they take ecstasy, people may use different hallucinogens,
Yeah.
shrooms,
Mhm.
you know, eat marijuana,
Yeah.
to help calm the body, relax the body, reduce that anxiety, help
Mhm.
you connect with the mind. I know that people that take hallucinogens, a lot of them, they talk about how they're able to like think freely,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and their mind can go in so many different places,
Yeah.
and they can imagine all these different things. So I can see
See
why
it.
people,
Yeah.
do those type of drugs and engage in that activity to make their sexual pleasure
Yeah.
Yeah.
acts better.
Better. Yeah. And do you think that Like, just to think about the betterment of sex, do you think couples should talk more about how or check in regularly about the sex?
Yeah.
Mhm,
I mean, I think so. I always say a healthy relationship has healthy sex.
mhm.
I don't believe you can have a healthy relationship without having healthy sex.
Yeah.
Does it ebb and flow? Yes. Are you gonna be doing it every day? Like, no, I do get that. Like, there's times and places that it's just not happening in relationships. But in order for I do believe that,
Mhm.
right? So being able to check in with your partner is just as important as if you check in on your budget, right? You
Yeah.
check in on
Yeah.
the kids, you check in on all these other things. Why are
Yeah.
we not checking in on our sexual health,
Yeah.
right? Why are we not having the conversation that says, "You know what? I looked up and it's been 3 months
Mhm.
since we've had sex.
Mhm.
What are we gonna do about it? Because we enjoy having sex, so why are we
Right.
not and it again, it could be life is lifing. I'm not
Right. Just
saying
busy,
you're
stressed
just
out,
busy.
all the
Yeah.
things, right.
But being able to check in and say, we should probably do something about this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And how can couples maintain that sexual healthy, because you brought that up, right? That healthy sexual relationship.
So what I really think is really, really interesting is we're in a day and age where there are so many things,
Yeah.
so many resources, so many different things. So it could be something as simple. And I also am a believer in sometimes you just have to plan things. Sometimes you have to schedule and plan things.
Dudes hate that. Some people really hate that.
No, they really do. And I
Schedule
get
and
it.
planning sex.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they were like, play, like anytime. Not that I've ever had to plan anything, but like whenever I talk to somebody about like or routine something, like, oh, maybe we should do like a
Every
weekly check in,
Yeah.
or like just to see how we doing, or bi-weekly check in to see how we doing emotionally. Dudes be like, I don't want to check in this feels like a this feels like a that,
But
and
it
it's like,
is.
mm-hmm,
But I think that's the other part. It is. Like relationships are work.
yeah,
Marriage is work. So it's not just gonna and I know I too was sold a dream that you're gonna find your prince or your princess charming and you're gonna fall in love and everything's gonna fall into place. But that's just not real life.
yeah,
And so
Yeah.
sometimes you do have to check in. And sometimes the check in doesn't even have to be about the sex because sometimes people lose sex because they lose intimacy. And
mm,
so the intimacy part is missing. So sitting down and having a intimate conversation with your partner,
yeah,
like and putting rules on it. We're not going to talk about work. We're not going to talk about the kids. We're going to talk about each other,
yeah,
right? And whatever the frequency needs to be. Like I get it. Every week might be too much for people, but like once a month, we're going to have a intimacy check
yeah,
where I check on you and you check on me, right? We're gonna sit and just look at each other. Like I've seen stuff where people are like you sit, what was I
they
watching?
had there's like this hug thing that I was
Yes.
like, oh
I
my
was
god, I
watching
gotta do that.
some reality show and
Yeah,
they literally the therapist told them to sit across from each other, like in each other's like lap, basically, and
yeah,
just stare at each other for like
yeah,
5 minutes. And they were like,
yeah,
oh my God, this is hard.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
If
Building
y'all
that
like him,
intimacy.
you
yeah.
let yeah, and it wasn't it was just it was something that just got missed because life was happening. Oh, I know what it was. I know what it was.
Okay.
The woman, she had just gone through cancer treatment.
Okay.
Mm.
And so, one of the things that was missing was sex, but she had gone through cancer treatment. So that was also like one, her libido had gone down, but
Yeah.
two, that was not high on the priorities.
Right.
It's like
Right.
living.
She like, I'm not trying to give you no head. I'm trying to live.
I'm trying to live,
Right.
right? But her husband had needs, right? And
Yeah.
so she acknowledged that. They acknowledge it, but what do we need to do to get back?
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
what do we need to do to become intimate again, emotionally, so that we can be physically intimate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so how important is aftercare?
And
Sex.
what do you like? In what way?
So this guy that I used to date, he was really good at aftercare. It was like a thing.
Mhm.
And so aftercare is the idea like after we have sex, I am caring for you emotionally, physically. So maybe it might be cuddling,
Mhm.
maybe it might be like a conversation and not about what just happened, but more so like checking in. It may be an act of like, let me go get you some water. Do you want something? Like just
I think it depends on the person.
yeah.
Some people are the roll over and go to sleep and leave me alone. I'm hot.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
some people are I after this I want to feel close to you. I want to be able to do these things because I do think that speaks to intimacy as well,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It speaks to how you care for your partner.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I was gonna say, going back real quick with the check-ins, I think a lot of times what happens, why people don't want to check in is because it turns into an argument,
Mhm.
right?
Oh,
Because it's like,
true.
yo, you checking me
Right.
on this. It feels like I'm not doing something right, and I may become defensive, or vice versa. The other person may become defensive. So, like, you have to do some pre-work prior to the
Yeah.
check-in to know, like, hey, I'm here for your best interest,
Yeah.
and vice
You safe
versa.
here.
Yeah, this is a safe space, and this is just a conversation for us to continue to grow.
And maybe we need to put some rules on it.
Yeah.
Right. Like, remember, I don't know if you saw the clip with Alicia Keys where she was doing a interview and she said that her and Swiss Beats, they don't argue.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they were like, "What do you mean we don't argue?" She was like, "We don't have to." Like how we talk to one another. She said something like, "Can we have a keep it real moment?"
Mhm.
And they both are very vulnerable and also accepting and just listening to what their partner
Yeah.
has to say. And it's like, she's like, "Because why do we have to argue? I'm just bringing to how this made me feel. And if that wasn't the intent, she gave this thing like he just be like, 'Oh my bad, I didn't mean it like that.'" And she's like, "Well, that's how it felt." And they kind of forgive and keep it moving,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I think it's really important. Like
Mhm.
sometimes there does have to be work
Yeah.
beforehand, and you do have to figure out why we aren't working, what rules. And I use the word rule, but it's just like guidelines. Like we're not going to use certain language. We're
Yeah.
going to do this. We're going to check in. Maybe we need to take a break because it's getting heated. That kind
Yeah.
of stuff. But that's the work part that a lot of times
Yeah.
people don't want to
Yeah.
do.
And it's so many different complexities too, like when talking about sex and even relationships. I mean, the upbringing, the trauma,
Yeah.
relationships, all these things that you really got to take into account for. So it's not easy.
Not at all.
Easy work at all.
Yeah, I know we like are coming up on time, and I do want to know like how can people become more sexually confident?
I think definitely learning themselves, so self-pleasure, learning
Yeah.
themselves, learning what they like, what they don't like, and experimenting, right? Like
Mhm.
kind of going back to the space of there's so many resources out here. Get you a book. I'm not saying watch porn, but because porn can be detrimental, but sometimes you can learn a couple things from porn, right?
Mhm.
Um, there is there are different like tools. There's like this box that this I don't know if you've ever heard of Shan Boudran, but she's a
Mhm.
sex educator.
Oh yes, I do.
I love
Yes,
her.
I heard. Yeah,
I mean, hope
I
she use
have
it.
her
I love
book.
her. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
But she has a box that's like it's got an intimacy coach,
Yes.
and it comes to your house, and it's got all
Yes.
these things.
All
And I
these
was like,
things. Thank you for
can't wait to get
reminding
a
me to order
partner.
that box.
I
Yeah.
can't wait to get a partner.
Yeah. You
So I'm
will
gonna get
be.
that book.
You will be. And so that's a good a good thing to suggest, like purchasing that
Yeah.
and subscribing to that. Is there any books that you can recommend or
And not off the top of my head.
How you feel about card games?
I was about to say card games are fun too, or
Yeah.
they're good. I can't think of any books right now, but I will get back to you.
yeah.
Listeners about it. But yeah,
We'll
definitely
share it
card
at the link
games.
below, y'all, when she
Yeah,
gives
yeah.
it to us.
You
We'll
always
have
talking about a link below and never drop the
Never
link.
drop. Why are you doing that in front of
Do it to
people?
her.
I just want y'all to know, Chris will be like, yeah, we're going to drop the link. She never dropped the link.
But
She-
that alone, you could have told me that after that. He is such a hater. You could have told me that after the daggone episode was done. No, you're right. I'm gonna drop it this time. Watch out for it this time. But yeah,
Utilize your resources.
yeah,
You know,
yeah.
they're out there. There's
Mhm.
some really good ones out there. Um, have fun with it.
Have fun with it.
Yeah.
I like that. You got anything you want to say to the people before we? Definitely, this was fun.
This
We
was
could
a
go
good
a whole
time.
nother hour. I'm
Listen.
kind of like, dang.
We could have went a whole nother hour for real though. But what I gotta say, I mean, we went over a lot. We talked
Oh,
about,
wow, yeah.
making sure that you talk about sex education early on with your
Yeah.
children and with, the youth. Make sure that you are telling your sexual partner what you like, what you dislike, checking in, having
Yeah.
routine conversations if
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah.
Exploring different things, being open to maybe kinks or, you know, whatever it is that you want to be open to, and just creating that trust within the partner that you have, and making sure that every sexual activity is not meant for every sexual partner.
Absolutely.
It's so definitely not meant for every sexual partner. So
Yeah.
that trust piece is probably like the number one piece, and work on the things that you are fearful of,
Yeah.
because a lot of times you may miss out on an experience that you really want because of that fear. And that goes for life in general, not just,
Yeah.
the topic that we're talking about today, but let's make sure that y'all are, practicing safe sex and
Please be
having
safe.
fun. Lisa.
And I do want to just add this piece. Like, if you have any questions or any curiosities, you can always submit those to the link that you can find in our bio. We can have Stephanie, or we can ask Stephanie to be a part of a live conversation where we can talk about this and have real time responses. If that is something that you all would like, just send us a message and let us know.
Yeah, y'all know how we gonna act.
Uh,
Act. No.
well,
But yeah, thank y'all for tuning in.
Thank
you,
you.
Stephanie, for being
y'all for
here.
having me.
So much,
Stephanie's birthday coming up. Her
Yes,
birthday
happy
probably passed by
early
this drop,
birthday.
but yeah, happy early birthday,
y'all.
Steph.
Thank y'all.
Turn
Thank
up,
you.
have some good. No, just one.
I mean, that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. All right. Bye, y'all.